Good morning. This is Kenneth and Paula here with the Advancing Equity Coalition, here to give you a quick recap of last night's board meeting. Heather is enjoying some well-deserved time off, so I have Paula here from Integrated Schools-Minneapolis to join us in this recap. Paula, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Glad to be here with you.
Yeah. Since you're on, actually, I don't know how familiar everyone is with Integrated Schools Minneapolis. Do you want to
Sure.
just give us a quick rundown of what Integrated Schools Minneapolis does?
Yes, absolutely. So, Integrated Schools is a national organization that has chapters in, I think, about 30 cities. The chapter in Minneapolis has been around since 2018, and it's one of the larger and more active chapters in the country. And I mean, basically, the philosophy behind integrated schools is that school desegregation is the only thing that over time has been shown to move the needle on opportunities and outcomes for Black, Brown, and Indigenous kids in schools. But it's historically been done on the backs of kids of color. And so integrated schools is all about, look, school desegregation, integration is still really important because our schools today are, still just as segregated as they've ever been, really. But they're white families and families with socioeconomic privilege need to be stepping up and taking on our fair share. And so that's what integrated schools is about.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. I know I just sprung that on you. We just spent some time prepping, and I did not tell you that I was going to
It's
ask.
okay.
So with that, thank you for being on today. And do you want to give us our rundown of what went down during last night's very, 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 very long board meeting?
It was so long. It was so
Yeah.
long. First, there was a lot of public comment, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Then we heard a CDD update. And the theme overall of the CDD update is that we have some unfinished business, that there were some values and some visions that we had committed to with the CDD, and some of those things haven't quite come to fruition yet. And so the three specific things we heard updates on were the language pathways, specifically our Somali and Hmong heritage language programs, small school subsidies. So we currently have 13 schools, and next year it will be 15 schools that have less than 250 students. And so they are receiving $200 per student to kind of subsidize so that those small schools can provide all the things that their kids need. And then we heard about magnet pathways because as you might remember with the CDD, magnet schools were centralized into the center of the city and made citywide so that there's equal access for everyone all over the city to attend them. But that was mostly done at the elementary level with a little bit of middle school level. And so there's talk about, like, should we be continuing that through the high school level? And if so, what does that look like? Then, even though it felt like that should have been the end of the meeting right there.
That was like 9 o'clock.
Yeah, right. That was 9 o'clock. That was like, we'd heard a lot of public comment. We covered a lot of ground. And then we went on to the next thing, which was a budget update. We heard from someone in MPS's finance department. And we heard that this year they are doing budgeting differently. There is a budget alignment committee, and everyone is really having to come and present on what they think their departments and their programs need. And they're presenting to this committee of 9 people who are MPS staff. And they thought that process would take 2 weeks. It's been 4 weeks, and they still aren't quite done. But the whole purpose is that they're really trying to align the budget with the strategic plan. And some important dates to know about that are that this Thursday, February 16th, is when schools will be receiving their budget allocations. And then there will be conversations within school communities, with site councils, with parents, with educators, about a lot of hard choices that have to be made, or just how schools want to allocate the dollars that they've been given. And then those are due back to the district on March 9th. And then we heard an update on the achievement and integration program. This is money that MPS and other districts get from the states, from the state, for the purpose of achievement and integration. And there's specific things that can be spent on and things that it can't be spent on. And every 3 years, MPS has to submit a plan to the state. So basically it's time to submit the next plan. That's due to the state March 15th. And that was it for the budget update. And again, then it was late. We could have been done.
Yeah.
But no, there was more important ground to cover. And that was a safety update, which felt especially, we heard about, just all of the different things that the district is doing to keep our kids and educators safe. I appreciated the interim superintendent, Rochelle Cox, said that safety is the thing that really keeps her up at night. That, more than any other responsibility that she has, it's really just how do we keep our people safe. And then we were done with presentations, and there was a little bit of a report from the policy committee and some committee updates from school board members on things they've been working on in their committees and out in community. And then at what time was it, Kenneth?
10, I don't know.
9:45.
Yeah, it was just about.
It was late.
I got at this point, yeah. At this point, they were trying to rush through. Like they're like, okay, we need to end this meeting.
Yeah.
Director Emmerich, I think modeled really helpful behavior and also modeled what our students are going through by getting off the dais and sitting on the floor. Like that meeting was a marathon. So I got home like right after 10, was having dinner during the Daily Show at 10:30, and
everyone was asleep in my house when I got home.
Yeah. So lucky you get to just hear this recap.
Yeah.
And so we are going to share our slide of last night. So our slide from last night was this slide from the budget presentation. And really, I thought the budget presentation, there's two phases of the budget presentation. The first one was like, here's what's currently going on for 2023, 2024 budgeting, right? Like here we're listening to these presentations. Schools are going to get their budget on February 16th, like Paula said, and then schools have to return their budgets on the 9th of March, and then the board's going to approve the final budget in June, right? So that was the first phase of that presentation. The second phase of that presentation was this, which was thinking about future budget planning. So as everyone knows, Minneapolis is facing really, really big budget questions moving forward. And so, there's a lot of things to consider, but I thought these three goals and this goal statement was really helpful in, thinking about the framing and the approach that we have to make these, and that MPS wants to try to make these decisions around. And so I think what really stood out to both you and me, Paula, was this second bullet point around MPS needs to find the intersection of what we value, what we can afford, and what we can deliver on. And I think that is an important thing to remember, because I think so often we hear the statement that the budget is a value statement, but we don't actually think about it's a value statement, and then we also have to intersect that with what we can afford, and then we have to also intersect that with like what we can actually deliver on. And then there's a lot of conversation actually during the board meeting about we need to figure this out with students, staff, and community, and not just do it to them. And really trying to figure out, what does that look like in the past? What is that going to look like? And I think while the board was asking the district that question, I think the district is saying, board members, that's actually going to be up to you. How do you want to do this? Because a lot of the decisions, and going back to your comment, Paula, around like the theme for last night felt like unfinished business. I think the theme was, board members, actually a lot of these decisions are up to you. We need to know how you value small schools, and if we should, in our future budget planning, think about continuing small school subsidies, or like, do we want to continue to invest in the language pathways, or completing some of our STEAM and arts pathways all the way through high school, or global humanities pathways all the way through high school. Like, those are values that the board has to set so that the district can budget. And so, I think that idea around doing it with them, and then also thinking about that intersection of what we can afford, what we value, and what we can deliver on is kind of an important mental model.
Yeah. I really appreciated, like, I'm visualizing, 3 intersecting lines, and
I
I
need a third
really,
hand. I need a
I
third.
need a third hand. I really appreciated that framing. And a way that I've kind of been thinking about it since then is, my values, and I think our district's values say that we want to do all of these things. Of course, we want heritage language programs. Of course, we want to be able to support schools in every neighborhood. Of course, we want, all the things. We want all the things for our kids, right? And the visual I've been having is like, I'm sitting at a restaurant and someone hands me a menu and I'm like, oh, everything on this menu looks delicious. Like, my values say, I want everything. I could eat everything on this menu. I want it all. But realistically, you don't order everything on the menu at a restaurant because there are budget limitations, and there is also, like, that wouldn't actually make me feel good if I ate everything on the menu, right? Like, we can't do that and do it well.
Right. So,
yeah.
I think that was an important conversation, and there were lots of invitations last night during the board meeting to be for community to be participating in current budget conversations, but also some of the future budget conversations that have to take place. So, I think those are things to look out for and be aware of, and pay attention to your school community's budget in the next month, especially. So, with that, let's go into our most valuable and our do better moments. Paul, I know this is a big moment for you. You get to do this for the first time. So do you have something spicy to start with for your most valuable moment? Let's start with our most valuable moment.
Okay.
What moment inspired you? And then we'll end with a spicy one, actually. Sorry.
So I just have to say, the public comment last night was amazing. I think about 25 people spoke. It was a mix of parents and educators and students and community members, and spoke about a variety of things. There were a bunch of people who spoke about their gratitude to the board for slowing down the superintendent search process, and really making sure to take the time to do full community engagement on what our school district needs in the next superintendent. There were public commenters. There were a lot of media specialists from MPS up there talking about how important it is to have a media specialist in every school. There were some folks who are involved at the high school level in, like, a competitive robotics program, talking about some of their needs. It was a variety of things. And for every single person, the room was just in, like, real raucous applause. Like, we were all just there for each other. And there have been times when I have sat in that room and it has felt very divided, and it has felt like we are pitted against each other. And last night, it felt like, as a community, we are all here because we all believe in MPS. We're all here for our kids. We all are in this together. We're going to have each other's backs. And that felt great. And there was one public commenter, I think she was number like 18 out of 25 or something, a white mom, who got up there and said some really transphobic stuff. And I didn't like hearing it. And what I appreciated is that when she was done, the room was just silent. And so the contrast between the silence that person got and, like, the applause and love and appreciation that everyone else got, that to me said, again, we as a community are here together, and this is our way of saying that we're not here for that. We're not here for transphobia. So that is my most valuable moment. The whole community audience that was at the Davis Center last night.
Yeah, I thought that, sometimes you kind of also get into mode in public comment, because public comment does go long. So you kind of get into this mode in public comment where you're, like, passively listening and you're, whatever. And so then everyone else starts clapping. So you start clapping. I will be the first one to admit I've done that multiple times.
I've never done that, Kenneth. I don't know what you're talking about.
But, like, I think, it was clear that everybody was listening to each other last night, and because of the one comment by that mother, it was almost like the signature. It just made all the other applauses, like, pop even further because of how how quiet and uncomfortable the room was after that woman's public comment.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I totally agree with you. I'd say my most valuable moment actually goes to all the board members during the conversation around the unfinished business of the CDD. I think that, we have lots of board members who are, playing catch up on the CDD. I remember like counting yesterday during that conversation, only 2 board members on the board currently voted about the CDD. One voted for, one voted against.
Yeah.
And so everyone was listening.
And that was only 3 years ago.
Yeah, so it's a lot of board turnover. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of listening, a lot of learning, a lot of really good questions about what is our intention, what do we want to do, what is the district's thoughts around things. And so I just thought that was a really important conversation to have because there are big questions, right? Again, thinking about small school subsidies, thinking about completing pathways, those aren't easy and especially cheap things to be thinking about and talking about. So I just thought that that was a important conversation that was had, and really for most of the night. The safety conversation I thought was really on point. So I just want to give my do better moment to all of the board members for a really healthy and really great engaging conversation and questions. Even if that did lead to a longer night, I thought, it was all important information and discussion that was had. So, all right, now is your time to be spicy. What is your do better moment?
Okay, so my do better moment is there was one thing that came up last night in part of the CDD presentation that to me stood in stark contrast to everything else we were hearing about, like, we have to really focus on our values and our strategic plan and make sure we're aligning our budget with that. There was just sort of this like nugget that to me felt randomly thrown in of, hey, maybe this year, like with this budget, we should add a 6th grade at Seward, which is the Montessori magnet in MPS. And I'm not here to say that like we should or shouldn't do that. I don't have an opinion on that. It could be a great move. It could not. I don't know. I do know that it just stood out to me because it's like we had just talked about magnet pathways, and it's like, okay, well, there isn't a middle or high school pathway for Montessori, and it didn't sound like that was something that the district is even really considering. And so I'm just not clear on like why we would. This to me feels like a pattern that MPS falls into too often, which is like making these one-off decisions that maybe a given school community wants, or like maybe there really are compelling reasons to do it. I don't know, but we make these one-off decisions thinking it just affects that school community without really taking into consideration that it's all a system and that whatever happens in one part of a system affects things in other parts of a system. So for instance, I think about if those kids do stay in essentially elementary school for one more year, and then they go to their community middle school, what is that experience like for those kids coming in? What is it like for staffing at that middle school? There's just lots of questions. And so my do better moment is that like, it doesn't seem like we're thinking holistically on that one. And I just want to urge everyone to keep thinking holistically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, a system starts to break down when you make these one-off decisions, and like it has ripple effects across the district, right? It's not just a single decision that lives in a vacuum or is isolated. So my do better moment is around the achievement and integration budget. So everybody put on their nerd glasses. This is a little wonky. But I thought yesterday, the presentation that we received around the achievement and integration plan didn't outline a goal, which feels really important to identify with the $13 million that the district is anticipating to receive. What we want to do with that money. We heard about what the district can spend that money on, and we heard some feedback that the district has received. We heard that the district wants to, or is doing an audit of everything that they've invested in the past 3 years with the achievement and integration money. But it feels like without an aim, without a direction, we actually don't know if we're going to get the outcomes that we want. And they're gonna do another presentation on this on February 28th. So this wasn't the only conversation that's going to happen about this. But the board actually has to vote on this on March 14th and submit this on March 15th to the Department of Education. And so it just feels like the district could have outlined a goal for the achievement and integration budget now so that the board could be thinking about that and then hear the full plan on February 28th so that they could vote on March 14th on it or whatever. So I guess I just didn't love that we didn't know what we're attempting to do with the achievement and integration budget, because there's really a long list of things that money can go towards, and some of it is really transformational stuff. But $13 million is a lot, and $13 million isn't a ton, so you have to use that money in really strategic ways, and it just didn't feel like there was a strategic direction outlined yet. And so I guess what I'm saying is I hope that we hear that very, very clearly articulated strategic direction on February 28th at the next committee of the whole meeting where they said they'll discuss this. So that was my do better moment. So with that, Paula, do you have any other thoughts from last night's meeting that you want to share?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, yeah, it was a long meeting, so you had a long recap. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.